All right, thank you. I'm the exclamation point today, which has been my role in past years. You know, one thing my topic, I started off with sustainability as the new security. And I mean that not just because they have a much bigger auditorium than we do, and they do, but when I first started in this industry, I was, my first job in IT was helping ship Windows 98 when I worked at Microsoft. And I came to work one day and there were Post-it notes on all the doors saying, don't open this certain mail, because we were just learning about how incredible the impact was of cybercrime on our industry. And it paralyzed us for days. Incredible cost to us at that point. We were trying to ship Windows 98, hundreds of millions of dollars of impact, and that was our first shot, right? So we've learned a lot since then. We are now at that point with sustainability. If you look at, and Shruti last year, she mentioned that we've already surpassed the aviation industry in our carbon emissions. And we are on this Moore's Law type of path. If we don't do anything here in this room, the few of us who are in good audience, thank you for last talk of the day, but everything that's going out here, the 6,000 people who are here, this entire industry will come to a halt in 2 or 3 years when they figure out what's going on, because we cannot continue on this path. So I do think of sustainability in the same way as security, and of course for storage, the two are married at the hip, because we have to have data sanitization for a circular economy. And good segue from the talk before. Again, my name's Arie van der Hoeven. I'm with Seagate Technology. So this is a study done by Microsoft Azure and CMU, Carnegie Mellon University. And this should be a shocker, because we think today about AI. We think about what the incredible impact of compute is, but we don't realize that storage is such a big part of that. 33% of operational and 61% of embodied emissions for Azure data centers. And we know that a lot of this comes from the semi-manufacturing industry, where unfortunately it's not renewable energy to the most extent today. And it's what's driving AI, it's what's driving our move towards SSDs, but at the same time we need to do a better job on the HDD side of achieving better power performance in data centers. So big challenge to every one of us in the storage industry. and this is really just one aspect of, if you look at the growth of exabyte growth in the industry, if we don't address this, everything we're doing out here comes to a halt. Critical for the industry, and it's already at the boardroom, but it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue. So this room will get fuller and fuller over time. So on the storage side, unfortunately, we today, speaking of the circularity topic, we shred tens of millions of drives a year. It's as if you were to take every Toyota that Hertz rents goes 30,000 miles, then it's resold. What if we just put those into a shredder? That's really the impact, because all these drives have usable life left. Maybe not in a data center in a high performance environment, but maybe they go off and do some mining for chia. Very environmentally and sustainable in a number of ways. First of all, that chia farming is much more energy efficient than, say, Bitcoin. So there is a huge opportunity here. And we want to do a better job with recycling, and we are working on that. But today, if you look at carbon emissions, the way we measure it, reuse is by far, by 275x by one estimate, more carbon efficient. So many of us here, and some of us in the room I see here, have been working on standardizing through IEEE 2883. We've written white papers. Through the Circular Drive Initiative, we're now working on papers to even try and gauge the health of a drive. So that once we are able to recycle a drive, who knows how to rate that drive? And if we talk to ITAD folks, you go into Reddit, it's almost like QAnon. folks really don't know. And part of that's our fault. We don't have the right metrics out there. We don't have the right frameworks, the tools. So we're working on that hard through the Circular Drive Initiative, through efforts like IEEE 2883, which is a continuation of the NIST 888. The NIST standard was a set of recommendations. IEEE 2883 are actual requirements and standards, and that's a group that's very active. So if you're really techie on this, that's a great place to go. So one thing we look at in IEEE 2883 is, what's the risk factor out there? And this is where I can sometimes get frustrated, but I'm also a security guy. Last year, I talked at this conference to the security group and had a very good response and a surprising response. But there is a certain absurdity to security. If you are thinking that someone's going to spend over $1 million to exact information from a single drive because it is of vital importance, that's fine. Degauss the drive, shred it. That's what we call here virtuoso. I think at one point we wanted to call it nightmare, but that's not good spec language. So we're looking here at the fact that tens of millions of drives, they back up semi-truck trailers to data centers. First thing as the drive leaves the wall, it gets shredded, 2mm by 2mm pieces. Those drives all have usable life left. It's a huge waste. We don't throw away cars like that. We don't do anything like that. But it's the fear, the absurdity of security. That being said, many of us who work in security, we make money by being paranoid, and we're often right. So let's not discount it, but that's the world we live in right now, and it's horrible for the environment. So we can also look at a more rational approach. And I won't go into this chart because I always fail to try and, I'm slightly dyslexic. But the tenor of this chart is that you do need to think that not all data is the same. So we do have levels of data, like my Costco shopping list, for example, does not need to be NSA level information with spies, spy contacts, that type of thing. So we do need to look at the data, manage the risk, and then act rationally. And I think if you're dealing with very large data centers, you're a hyperscaler, you deal with government contracts, it gets complex, but we do need to do a better job also of managing security before you have to enter that shredding machine. Not all data is the same. And I think that's something we can manage better as an industry and achieve more circularity and help save the planet. I mentioned this earlier, but there is a push for OCP drive use reuse certification. So this is something ongoing in the OCP groups right now. And it gives us a holistic way of looking at a drive, its health, what it can be used for, and provide more clarity around tools you can use. At Seagate, we are open sourcing some of our C-Chest tools that are not already part of Open C-Chest and contributing to this effort. And I think we as an industry on the HDD side can probably do a better job of having fewer proprietary logs and more of a general way of looking at the health of a drive and its viability for reuse. So getting back to security, and this was mentioned earlier, there are these outstanding projects coming out of the OSP security group, and this is a great example of how they have been listening to us as a group, and we've been feeding off of them and saying, hey, look, there has to be a path forward to getting more certainty and security around understanding drive sanitization and understanding the quality of the firmware. And the fact is that in the past, there have been drives that went through a cryptographic erase, but not every single bit of data on those drives. And I think they cited some SSD vendors, but was not done in a way that met their standards, right? So they've come up with their own, to their credit, their own efforts. The first is the OCP SAFE program, which is really a set of requirements that are done by third-party auditors who are qualified by OCP security, participate in the SAFE program. And this is led by Microsoft, Google, and others. And we at Seagate have looked at this. First we thought, well, last thing we need is another set of auditors. But when we looked at the program and the value to it and what we already spent on security, we're in. You know, we aren't here to announce that today, but we're actively pursuing a SAFE certification for our drives. So a big win there for both sustainability and OCP security. And then moving forward, we're also looking at, you know, especially the hard drive vendors, we have for many years, we've had systems of root of trust for measurement and systems for how we key wrap and going through NIST and going through all the certifications, including FIPS and common criteria that we do. We have parallel efforts with CLIPRA, but we're also looking at CLIPRA closely. So we are very positive on the efforts coming from OCP security, and we hope to see, you know, a lot of collaboration moving forward. And again, the truth is, nothing out here happens unless we're both successful. You know, we have to have secure compute environments, but we cannot continue to move ahead at Moore's Law, where we're today already at 2% of you know, global carbon emissions and moving northward. That is unsustainable, and it will, again, this room will get fuller in the future. And with that, I think I have one more slide here, and this is I'm just going to reference here to IEEE 2883. You know, there are standards around how to sanitize data, and some of those may come down to the organization. You know, you may want to have, for example, multiple layers of encryption, both at software and then again with an SED type of drive. If you're dealing with SED drives or SSD drives, again, it's different. But we want to make sure there's a path forward and that we're collaborating as an industry, working with groups like IEEE, and certainly here at OCP. So my call to action really, and I don't need to go through this necessarily in much detail, but the fact is that, you know, if we aren't successful here, and with all the great talks that were given today, nothing out there moves. You know, so we are not going to move forward as an industry. And as I mentioned earlier, you look at the percentages, storage is a big part of that. We're not the only part of that. So with that, you know, please participate in OCP. If you're in the drive space, participate in the Circular Drive Initiative. And please look us up and keep coming. And thank you so much for being here. Questions?
Hi, Arie, I'm Julius from Meta. You showed earlier in your presentation the really big number, 61% of embodied carbon of a data center. Is that relative to the IT equipment of a data center or everything including MEP and enclosures?
You know, that came from the Azure study with Carnegie Mellon, and that was embodied carbon, was that number. And I believe it included everything you're talking about there. So we are often surprised at how big a percentage storage is. It's often overlooked, but it's a big number.
Do you know what the number would be if it's relative only to other IT equipment?
I don't. That would be a question for Microsoft, but there is a link in Hot Carbon. There's a link to the paper there, so you can look. And the authors there are very responsive. So I do recommend you reach out, and then they'll respond on there. I think John Michael, Hans, and myself we're cited, but the authors are on there.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you.